All right. Hey, everyone. Happy Future Friday. I hope you're doing great. Today is June 23, 2023. That's kind of cool. I'm in a different place. My wife and I are out and about. And so I set up a mobile studio and I'm like, let's keep rocking. So I'm super grateful that you get to carve out a little bit of time, hang out with me, and let's put in the future work. Let's work on your leadership. Let's level up and grow your executive capacity. If you'll bear with me just a moment, I'm putting my slides together and trying to get them uploaded right here. But I'm so excited about today's conversation. It's all about your leadership presence. How are you showing up in your workplace? How are you showing up with your family? How are you showing up online? How are you showing up? And do you show up, feeling insecure in your ability to lead, or are you really confident? And does that project in a giant leadership presence? And so we're going to be hitting that together. But if you have any questions, I am going live because I want to interact with you. I want to help. I want to invest any insight or strategies that I can share with you. So go ahead and put that in, and let me just upload some visual aids for our conversation today. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Prepare to Go there. This is a leadership preparedness podcast. My name is Peter Burchfield, and I have over 15 years of leadership experience, lessons learned, experience earned, and now I'm still leading in a team setting. I'm also launching out with this coaching endeavor, but I wanted to invest in executive leaders, those that are learning, those that are unlearning and retooling, because I have a lot of appreciation for you. It really is a noble thing to put yourself on the front lines of leadership in any field that you're in. And I also know the demands and the disappointments that come with the job. And I just was kind of looking around the landscape in the leadership space, and I was like, we're getting a lot of content, we're getting a lot of good inspiration, but we need that hands-on encouragement and endurance to actually go through the entire journey. And so that's why I keep showing up, to encourage you, to let you know that your journey matters. The leadership journey that you're on matters. And so we're going to talk about that as we go. But it's super fun to see some folks jumping on. Y'all really do make it worthwhile for me. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you have any questions that we can help you with. But in the meantime, let me stop talking just for a few seconds and try to upload the slides for today. This is part of live. This is how we go live. Yay. All right. Processing. Today is a good day to process. Don't you agree? I call it Future Friday because I get to practice future present thinking, and we don't do it enough. I was coaching a executive leader. He's a director of kind of some student ministries, youth programs, and whatnot. And we're just talking about life, talking about his leadership journey. And he said, you know what? I really appreciate talking with you because I don't think about this stuff enough. And I get it, right? We're preoccupied with being a leader, that we're not actually leveling up, thinking about the next phase now and putting in that future present thinking. So it is so important to do that. Let's dive into the content. And what I'm going to do is turn the music off so that way you can be thinking along with me. And as we get deeper into this conversation, I want you to be thinking about how it applies to you. How are you going to personalize this, right? It's not enough just to hear this. How are we going to pioneer the year with the upgraded understanding that we have? And so it's going to be a little different, but we're going to be talking about giant leadership presence, giant leadership presence. And I want to read something that I wrote earlier for us today. Um, do you know what leadership presence is, why it's important, where you would size up in your own organizational context? Well, leadership presence is your ability to inspire confidence in others based on your leadership capacities. It's not only about your title or your position, but it's really that relational influence that you have that commands respect, that inspires a team, and that influences others to follow you in a bold but necessary direction. And so here's a big idea I want you to take with me. And it's this: when we talk about your leadership presence, your leadership presence is about being perceived as a leader and being received as someone who knows where the team needs to go next. It's not just about your leadership position. And so there's a lot of people, and they're banking on a title to inspire change or to motivate action. And they don't realize when they show up in that meeting, they're itty bitty 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 bitty. They're super small in light of what's going on in that room, because they haven't leveraged the power of leadership presence yet. So what I want to do is contrast small leadership presence with giant leadership presence. Small or weak leadership presence might be characterized by someone who struggles to motivate the team. They don't feel like they're relating or resonating with their team. They don't feel like they can speak up in the important meetings or on the important topics. They're just around the conversation, but they're listening to what's going on the team, or they're listening to what's going on with the organization, but they don't really feel like they have a voice there where it counts. And weak or small leadership presence could be noted by those whose ideas aren't taken seriously. Think about that. Now, they may have difficulty making decisions. They may appear anxious or even uncertain. They may try to blend in to the corners of the room. They're not willing to step up, and they fail to take responsibility for their actions. That's small leadership presence. A small leadership presence is often going to go overlooked, disregarded, or even dismissed. These are leaders, with air quotes, that might struggle to inspire the team, that have, they struggle to really be listened and heard or be taken seriously, and they hesitate to voice their opinions in those crucial crossroad meetings. So I'm not trying to start on a low note. I just want to kind of explain what we're talking about and where we're going. And I want you to help me. What are some examples that you have seen with small leadership presence? What are examples, or how are you thinking about growing your own leadership presence right now? Meaning, when you show up into a room, you know how to stand tall in your field, to be confident in your ability to bring change, to contribute value, to serve others, to solve problems. You're not going to back down. You're not going to shrink back. You are going to stand tall, and it's going to make a giant impact, a giant influence wherever you go. So let me know what you're thinking in the comments. Put a comment right now. I would love to follow up with that at some point. Let's get back to the note. So if you don't think you can lead, That's okay. But why should anyone else think the same? If you don't think you can lead, how are you going to expect other people to think you can lead them as well? It really does start with you. You have to have the credibility, the confidence, the competence in yourself. And when you know that you've put in the reps, you've done the future work, you're showing up ready, man, it is unmistakable. You know it. You don't have to be loud about it because your proof is in your presence. The proof of your leadership is going to be in your presence. You show up, you fill that space, and people appreciate it. They're not intimidated by your leadership presence. They are relieved by your leadership presence. They say, oh, thank you. We've got someone who's going to take responsibility, who's going to think creatively, who's going to work collaboratively, who's going to lift others up, who's not going to be offended, when we have to go through controversy or confrontation, not to live above reproach, absolutely, but to really navigate some of the tough, rough stuff. And people are relieved when a real leader shows up, not someone who is competing for the optics of position, but someone who is actually showing up to collaborate, to serve, to work well, to figure out what needs to be done next. That's what people appreciate. That is giant in a good sense, giant in a positive sense. And what I hope we're going to begin to see over time here, when we talk about your leadership presence, I want you to grow giant leadership presence. And what that means is that great leadership cannot be ignored. Great leadership cannot be ignored. We got so many people that are trying to be noticed. They're trying to be, loved and appreciated and respected, and they're trying to be coddled for the leadership title that they carry. And hey, leadership is a skill. It's a function. It's an action. It has measurable signs of proof. And that's why we have to focus on developing the skill set and the mindset of being a prepared leader instead of being preoccupied trying to feel and be treated like an important person. All right. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. Let's get on with the notes. Now, when you have giant leadership presence, leaders inspire confidence in others. They command authority, meaning they don't tolerate chaos. They don't put up with low-key anarchy. They drive impactful influence in their field. Right now, we're going to focus on the positive side of giant leadership, not small leadership, not weak leadership presence, giant leadership presence that is reassuring, that takes responsibility, that is responsive to the situation that's happening in real time on the front lines or in the field. In contrast, a leader with giant leadership presence is respected and heard. They inspire their team. They are seen as confident and capable, and they're trusted by those above and around them. They speak with authority, they listen with empathy, and they lead with certainty. And here's the good news. Anyone with a giant leadership presence is going to stand tall in their field. We have so many different fields of leadership represented. We have people that are in education, people that are in business, people that are in government, whether that's local government or other higher levels of government. We have people that are like crushing it, really pioneering and innovating in technology, social media, in the arts. They're all over the place. Pioneering leaders are showing up all over the place, and that's because that's what pioneers do. They do not settle in their comfort zone. They keep going on with a clear sense of calling because they know that the mission matters. And so we've got all of these amazing leaders showing up in these spaces that really need to be explored and expanded, areas that need to be transformed and even reformed. And these pioneering leaders, they are not going to let their ego fill the room. They're going to let the mission be front and center again. So if that's something that resonates with you and you're like, hey, I need to grow my leadership presence. I know I have ideas that are worth listening to and implementing. I know that I'm willing to put in the work. I believe there can be a hopeful future in my context, in my field, but I feel like I'm being stepped on. I feel like I'm being overlooked. I don't want small leadership presence, but I feel like people are treating me that way. Or maybe you're in a really established role, but you feel like your influence has been shrinking and shrinking over time. And so you're feeling small when you need to be standing tall. What do? Well, giant leadership presence is the ability to command the space you occupy. It's not by bullying people. It's not by pushing people around. It's amazing. Someone who's standing for the truth does not have to intimidate, overpower, silence. The truth speaks for itself. The truth has its own results. That's what giant leadership presence does for us. And when we are willing to develop and deploy great leadership, it cannot be ignored. It's recognized as influential and impactful. So what we're going to do is discover the overlooked insights to giant leadership presence. Because everybody wants giant leadership. They want to be a giant in their field. They want to know that when they publish the book, people are going to buy into that mission, that movement that it represents. They want to know that when they show up to a meeting, they are prepared to present a hopeful future with a strategic plan. But the people that are also a part of that conversation are prepared to listen. They're prepared to lean in and to pull together their resources and their relational capital to make it happen. We want to have giant leadership presence, but we're wondering, what does it look like and what does it take? And I'm going to show you that most people are missing the insights that get them to a giant leadership presence, and it's because it's hidden in plain sight. The keys that we need, the insight that is going to get us to giant leadership presence is hiding in plain sight, and most people are overlooking those insights. There's a word right in the middle, and it's ant. If you want giant leadership presence, you have to think like an ant. And when we think like an ant, we begin to lead like a giant. You're saying, Peter, what are you talking about? Well, I really want to grow as a leader, and I don't want to just get distracted and discouraged by all of the trends and all the vogue ideas about, leadership culture, because there's so many ideas out there, but do they have merit? Do they really work? Are they really transforming people's lives? And are they really serving the mission that so many leaders subscribe to? And so I go to the Bible because it is literally the best place to get wisdom for life and leadership. So as a Christ follower, I really want to apply wisdom to my life. And so, I'm open to learn. because I believe truth is going to be true no matter where you hear it. But the Bible is the place to go for the wisdom we need. So I did a Bible study, and I just want to pull out one little verse, and it's overlooked. And a lot of people, they feel like they're being stepped on in their leadership role. But if you'll learn to think like an ant, you'll actually lead like a giant. And so there's this verse in Proverbs chapter 6, and we're going to read it. Go to the ant, you lazy person. Consider the ant's ways and be wise. I think someone who values wisdom, practical wisdom, is going to show up prepared for any situation. When you prioritize wisdom in your life, you will be practically prepared to navigate and create the future there. And so here we see a word picture, a living example of what self-leadership looks like. And here's the lesson that we can learn from the ant. It's small. A lot of people will overlook it. A lot of people will say, oh, it's an ant, step on it. But, if you've ever been bitten by a fire ant, you know that it can really pack a punch. And when we have these powerful insights, we will be able to have a strong impact as well. All right, so here's the lesson. The ant knows how to lead themselves well. The ant knows how to lead themselves well. It says, having no guide, having no overseer, having no ruler. They get to work. They put in the work. It says they harvest, they gather during the summer, and they gather their food with the harvest in mind. They know winter's coming. Do you have that kind of future focus to look ahead, to anticipate, and then to activate yourself towards a mission that matters? So let's look at these values again. When we think like an ant, we can lead like a giant. A lot of people want giant leadership presence in their leadership role, but they're overlooking the insights that the ant wants to teach them. And here they are. The ant doesn't have a guide. The ant doesn't have an overseer. The ant doesn't have a ruler. And yet it still gets the job done. So these are, why didn't it just say the ant doesn't have a guide and get on with it? Because there are actually 3 skills that an ant has that can teach us about executive leadership. You want to grow your capacity to lead well? It starts with leading yourself, leading others, and then leading through others. And when you are a leader, you don't have anybody else that's doing these things for you. You have to cultivate these executive capabilities in yourself. If you don't have these executive capabilities, then you're not going to have giant leadership presence. The overlooked secret to giant leadership presence is hidden right here in plain view. It's amazing. I love it. Self-leadership will become the pathway to giant leadership presence. So using the metaphor of this ant's wisdom, we can unveil how self-leadership is the key to becoming a giant in your field. It's the ability to make decisive action, to track your progress, and to enforce accountability. These are the 3 executive skills that we can learn and that we can level up with. And when people overlook self-leadership, they miss the path to grow giant leadership presence. Now, You say, how do you know these are the three skill sets? Because these are the three words that are used. So you have to do a little bit of a deep dive into these three words, but I want you to see what they are again. Here they are. An ant doesn't have a guide. An ant doesn't have an overseer. An ant doesn't have a ruler. These are three kinds of executive leadership. This is executive leadership happening in these three ways. The first, and you go in and do the deep dive and you understand the words and you see what the words mean and what it's all about. I'm simplifying it for the sake of this conversation, but I encourage you, go on your own learning journey and get into this. You're going to love learning how to grow your leadership in a reliable way. So the first one is the ant doesn't have a guide. An executive leader knows how to guide themselves and other people with a clear sense of direction. Do you have a decisive approach to your life and leadership? Growing as a decisive person is one of the make or break qualities that we have to have giant leadership presence. If you show up and you're indecisive, you're literally shrinking in front of everyone in the room. If you kind of vacillate, you're kind of, doing the devil's advocate game on either side. You're like, well, I don't know about that. And I don't think so. And I don't think. Now, I'm all for critical thinking. I'm all for being strategic and looking at the options and the angles. But at the end of the day, you still have to have a choice. You still have to voice a direction. What is the call? Leaders have to have the confidence, the credibility, the capability to make a call. Not just that you're blabbing hot air, not just that you're saying, I don't like that and I don't think that'll work. Okay, well, what will work? What could happen here? Making decisions is the first skill that we have to cultivate to grow giant leadership presence. Become a decisive person. Don't wait on someone else to decide for you. Don't wait on someone else to do what you are meant to do. This starts with your life, but as you refine this skill, and it's a skill, anyone can learn these skills. You can gain wisdom for your life. You can level up in this skill set. If you will become a decisive person, practice being a decisive person. And I'm not saying that you have to have your way all the time. I'm not saying that you are just the most hard, difficult person because you just have an opinion about everything. No, you got to be flexible. You got to be cooperative. But when it counts, do you know how to make a call? Or are you just shrinking in front of everybody? Make decisions. Now, the other level of executive leadership that's seen here, you say, why do you say executive leadership, and why don't you just say leadership? Because I'm more convinced we need to be helping the executive leaders, because no leader is meant to live or lead in isolation. It's dangerous to have a Lone Ranger leader model. And it's not healthy. It's not helpful for those who want to be leaders to think that they have all the answers and that nobody else can have input in their life. So I want to help encourage those that aspire to be a leader. And I want to let you know that in order to do that, what we're really saying is, are you going to be thinking and taking action and taking responsibility on an executive level? Whether you're there right now or not, that's the path you're going on. That is your leadership journey. But also for those who are currently executive leaders, maybe you're a solopreneur, maybe you're a content creator, maybe you're a software developer, maybe you're a high school coach, maybe you're a stay-at-home parent, maybe you're an empowering pastor, maybe you're a business owner, maybe you're a C-suite executive. We have to go back to the overlooked insights that make leadership like encouraging and inspiring again, instead of towering over people with this heavy-handed approach. Let's go back to why leadership works. It works because there are people who are willing to put in the work to serve others, to solve problems, and to make a difference for the better. So these are the lessons we have to learn, and they're overlooked all the time. The second aspect of ant-like leader, which actually creates giant leadership presence, is they know how to oversee themselves. They don't need anybody hovering over them, micromanaging them. You don't need a micromanager to keep you going. You don't need somebody who's going to nag on you or brag on you to get results. Not only can you make a call, you know the direction you need to go, you actually are taking action and you are following through because you know how to oversee yourself, and that becomes a huge value for other people. You say, hey, I can actually oversee this area of our organization. I've done it in my own life. You can go to my house. My house is in order. You can go, talk to my friends, talk to the people that I get to contribute with. You will see my life is well ordered, not because I got it all figured out, not because I'm the amazing person. If there's any good, it's because of a good God who's been helping me and transforming me. But what you're going to see is the signs, the fingerprints of leadership. All right. So then what we're going to see is they know how to track their progress from finish to start to finish. They know how to keep track of the moving parts. They're not intimidated by the details, the logistics. They are engaged in the work. They are like that little ant scurrying around the field, and they don't get disoriented when they're in the field and they say, oh no, I bumped into something, or oh no, somebody's trying to step on me. They stay focused because they know how to oversee themselves. It's amazing when you see ants take over a space. And they get into anything. Man, they can crawl upward. They can go on the ceiling. They can go all around. And, to us, it's kind of threatening. But wouldn't it be amazing to have that kind of tenacity, that kind of intentionality, that kind of follow through in our own organizational cultures? So there is actually something to celebrate and emulate when we think about this. Let's go back to the big idea. We want to have giant leadership presence. And there are 3 overlooked insights because the big idea is hiding right inside that word giant. It's, are you thinking like an ant? Because if you're willing to show up when no one else pays attention, you will get to a place in your leadership journey that no one can ignore you. That's so good. I got to help you. I got to encourage you to say it again. If you are willing to show up and lead yourself and put in the work and keep going, keep growing when no one is paying attention, and you're willing to just be, this ant-like leader, you will get to a place in your leadership journey where you cannot be ignored, because your presence will be the proof of your leadership. All right, so track your progress. And then the last one is a ruler. A ruler is someone who actually makes a verdict, who enforces consequences, right? They actually have the power to say, good to go or go to jail, right? A ruler, someone who actually governs, is going to have a measure of authority. They understand their weight, their leadership weight, and they will be able to enforce a consequence. I think it starts with us. We have to say, can we enforce our own consequences? Do we need somebody else to, push us around? Or do we have that God-given agency, that God-given responsibility to grow in our own sense of territory. Now, that is tough for people. And when you show up and you're not willing to take responsibility for your actions or even, for the way you interact with people, then you're shrinking in the room. But when you show up and you live by this principle, you say, I believe that, it's important to respect natural consequences, and we need to hold ourselves accountable. And when we do that, we're going to inspire other people to live by a higher standard. Yeah, I mean, this is where leadership gets gets serious, right? Because in an organization, the leader is going to be the one who hires or fires. And I think a lot of people rush to this side of the framework, and they say, well, this is what leadership looks like. But really, it starts in very small doses. It starts in very small areas before we get to the big ones. So in recap, when people overlook self-leadership, they miss the path to grow giant leadership presence. From this simple life principle, we can learn 3, what I'm calling executive leadership skills, because when we think like an ant, we can grow a giant leadership presence. We have to know how to be able to make decisions on our own, which makes us a more decisive person that is actually really valuable to the team, valuable to the work. We have to be able to track our progress on our own, and also that becomes a skill set that we can use to serve and leverage the mission. And then we have to be able to enforce accountability. Can we hold ourselves accountable? Can we hold others accountable? Here's my encouragement based on this ancient wisdom with an ant's philosophy for life and leadership. Stop trying to be noticed, because great leadership cannot be ignored. Stop striving to be praised. Great leadership commands attention. Just as an ant quietly goes about its work, your diligent, purposeful leadership will not be overlooked after a while. So let's get to some action planning. I want to help you create your own path to a giant leadership presence. The first thing I want to encourage you to do is start with self-awareness. Self-awareness. Understand your current leadership presence. It's okay to say, I just don't feel comfortable showing up in that setting, having a voice, being involved, taking ownership of opportunities, and navigating around obstacles. That's fine, but you got to be honest about it. And then ask, what feedback do you need to get from other people to get a better read on your own sense of leadership presence? How do you perceive yourself? How do you perceive yourself? This is massive. I'm thinking of a story where God's people were trying to go into this new territory. God had promised them, but he wasn't just going to hand it to them. He said, hey, you're going to have to step up and believe that, hey, I'm with you. And what happened was, they said, hey, there's giants over there, and we were like grasshoppers instead. Man, if they said, we can't do it because we feel like grasshoppers. Now, what they should have said is, we feel like ants and we can take them. If you just change your word picture, change your metaphor, change the way you see yourself showing up into a new space, into a new opportunity, it could be literally the difference between shrinking back and launching out. But it started with them. They didn't even poll the giants. They just saw them from a distance and say, hey, we kind of feel like grasshoppers compared to them. But actually, with a different mindset, they took initiative and they went for it. Second thing is we have to embrace self-leadership. Develop habits that showcase your initiative, not your sense of intimidation. Develop habits that showcase your initiative. Take responsibility for little things, and it will grow your leadership presence over time. Be committed to the choices you make. Be a leader that you would want to follow, and then others will want to follow as well. The third step in this action plan is communicate effectively. Learn how to communicate effectively. How you communicate your vision, your ideas, your expectations will significantly affect your leadership presence. I want you to work at communicating clear, consistent, engaging communication. It takes work. It really does. It takes work to understand what you're feeling, what you're facing, and then to translate that to other people. And practicing that communication back and forth is actually going to help you grow in your leadership presence. I've experienced that personally, where before I would feel so just misunderstood, mistreated, like they don't get it. And I would actually feel myself just getting more and more emotionally rattled. And I had to learn that if I'm really speaking something that is truthful and helpful, then I don't need to stir it up. But if I'm willing to speak calmly and let the facts speak for themselves, and to not feel so emotionally invested, like, the way people receive me is going to determine the way I feel. Communication was a big step. And the last one is invest in your continuous learning. Great leaders are lifelong leaders. Continually invest in personal and professional development. See, the ant has a different ethos. The ant is working hard when everybody else is chilling. And the ant knows that it's not about what's happening today. The work they're doing is future focused. And that's the way we need to be as well. We're investing in our future. So when we take Future Fridays, when we get in these kind of conversations that just help us stay sharp and keep, putting in the reps of our own leadership development, we're actually investing in our capacity to lead well in the future. And I think it's mission critical for every organization to have this kind of culture. All right. So thank you guys so much for listening along, being on this this guided journey, so to speak. I want to thank you. Thank you for being willing to grow yourself and to show up in a bigger way. I'll just kind of throw this out as kind of like my own personal inspiration. You say, man, I don't know if, me having leadership presence is important. I think we're going to have to be willing. It's actually we have seen examples. I'm free flowing here, guys. We've seen examples of prideful people filling up a room, but I'm inspired by the idea of humble people filling up a room as well. And I think it's a misunderstanding that humility is actually shrinking when in reality, humble people, when we humble ourselves, we get grace. And that grace empowers us to do amazing things. And I'm inspired by this idea. It's a reality, right? That it says, Jesus is the all in all, that Jesus fills every space, right? That is the reality, that's the hope that we have. And so even Jesus's leadership model, he has the most giant ultimate leadership presence. And when we are willing to show up in these small pockets of influence and these small areas, we actually um, are learning what it's like to follow our Lord, and we're letting him shine through us. So that's more of a devotional, but it kind of came from a Bible study. So a little bit different content today, but just kind of wanted to throw it out there in the internet and let people stay encouraged with their leadership journey, because I don't know why we think, this won't work in your leadership context. It absolutely will. So hey, if you're kind of just tuning in, you're saying, who is this guy, and what's he up to, and how can I keep following? If you haven't heard yet, my name is Peter Burchfield, and I focus on leadership preparedness, and I get to help leaders on an executive level with their coaching, with their teams, with their organizational cultures. And I really want to help leaders prepare for the future now, prepare for their next phase now. And it's really tough, and it doesn't feel realistic when you're kind of in the thick of it, right? And you're building your business, and you're trying to balance your life, or you're trying to navigate all of these challenges around you. And if we could just take the time to slow down, be a little bit more intentional, be a little more strategic, it'll actually set us up for some uncharted success in the future. And what I have found is that developing your leadership is one of the most productive things you can do, because you're actually shifting from the power of your own personal productivity to the combined collaboration of many, many talented people, many, many gifted people. So why wouldn't you want to leverage the power of collaboration? Why wouldn't you want to band together with other pioneering thinkers, other pioneering leaders, so that way you are on the frontier edge of your industry and not on the settling side, and you're actually innovating and creating, and you're adapting, and you're staying agile, not feeling fragile when things get shaky. So as a part of this YouTube community, I want you to know that I've made a commitment to show up on Fridays. I call it Future Fridays, and I'll be live streaming for the next few weeks at 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. So join in these conversations. Today's a little different because I didn't have my monitor, but I was kind of in a mobile studio today. But normally I can, see comments and work on my slides and kind of coordinate this all at once. So thank you for your patience on that side. But I encourage you, engage in these conversations, share your insights, invite others who will benefit from this kind of executive leadership coaching, and sign up for our next Prepared Leader Challenge to experience practical hands-on leadership training. I would love to just kind of get in a group coaching environment and to help you work through those 5 mission critical decisions that every prepared leader needs to have before they show up to the next meeting with their team. And then finally, I want to encourage you, ask about my executive coaching. I have 15 years of experience in this field. I'm ready to guide executive leaders with a mission that matters through the unfamiliar terrain of your next leadership phase. Remember that preparation is the key to success. So let's start that journey today. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I want to remind you, you're going places, so prepare to go there. I'll see you next week, and hopefully in one of these trainings or one of these challenges real soon.